Welcome to Civics and Coffee, a history podcast, the show all about United States history, delivered to you in the time it takes to enjoy your morning cup of coffee. I'm your host, Alicia, a historian trained in United States history with a passion for telling both the known and unknown parts of America's past. So grab your coffee and get ready for some bite-sized history. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am so excited to share today's conversation with Rob Edwards, who recently published a graphic novel all about past episode topic Robert Smalls. The book, titled Defiant, walks readers through the incredible events surrounding Smalls' escape and is a book you won't want to put down. I hope you all enjoy the conversation. Hey everyone, with me today is Rob Edwards. He is a 30-year veteran of movies and television who wrote and produced shows including The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Full House, and In Living Color, before writing 2 classic animated films for Walt Disney Feature Animation, the Academy Awards and Golden Globe nominated The Princess and the Frog, and the Academy Awards nominated Treasure Planet. He is also the author of a historic graphic novel, Defiant, which tells the story of Civil War and Reconstruction hero Robert Smalls, and will be the focus of our conversation today. Welcome, Rob.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. Let's dive right in. When did you first learn of the Robert Smalls story?
Interestingly, somebody who is a member of Legion M, which is the for us, by us kind of production company in Hollywood that crowdfunds their material. A friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, somebody just sent in this meme, and it said, we make all these movies about all these other things, but there is no movie about Robert Smalls." And it listed a bunch of his accomplishments. And he said, "Well, we're we would like to make a movie about him, and would you consider taking a look at what we have?" And as he's talking about it, I consider myself pretty well read, and I was flummoxed. I had no idea who he was, and so I started Googling in the other window as we were talking, and I was astounded by not only the events that made him famous, but also what he did afterwards. It was remarkable, and at that point, I said, "Okay, well, somebody needs to tell this story really well, and if not me, who? If not now, when?"
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that you did is you decided to tell Robert Smalls' story in the form of a graphic novel. So, kind of what prompted you to do that? What was the motivation behind that?
First thought was, if we'd like to make it into a movie, usually somebody says, "Well, what's the IP? What are you basing this on?" And I had looked at a lot of the biographies and a lot of the books that kind of dealt with the story, but none of them had the angle that I was looking for, which was it's about a man trying to make a better life for his family. Just the human element of this incredible person, this incredible journey. So I thought, okay, well, I should probably cobbled together everything that I've been researching and write my own biography of him. And then I thought, like, well, if we want to have it read by the people who will be affected by it most, we should probably go where they are. I'm sure, as you know, people are reading fewer and fewer books, and things like graphic novel are taking more and more of the mainstream. So if you want to reach a high school kid who can be inspired by this, what better way than to put a graphic novel in his hand?
That was it was well articulated, well illustrated. I sat down and in an afternoon, I read it cover to cover, and I know the story of Robert Smalls, and I still found it to be incredible and fascinating and super accessible. So I think, at least from that standpoint, you succeeded in your mission.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's a movie on paper. I mean, the artists really did a great job with it. Nicholas Draper Ivey, who does Static Shock, do the cover. And Ray Anthony Height, who is also who does Black Panther, is he does a lot of the internal covers. And then Sean Damian Hill, who's also does Black Panther for Marvel, is he does the interiors. Everybody just did astounding work. So
Yeah.
it's really fun to read.
And for those listening who might not know or who forgot the episode that I had done previously on Robert Smalls, who was he?
Well, Robert Smalls is known for a night when he was 23 years old, and he was working on a Confederate ship that ferried munitions from one place to the other. And when the white crew took off for the night, I believe to have the black crew guard the ship and all these munitions, and probably afraid that it was going to blow up that night. Robert, as his crew members, went out to the Charleston Bay, met their families out in the bay, and then Robert, disguised as the captain, got through 5 military checkpoints and surrendered the ship to the Union Army on the other side. As I believe the sun rose, because they took off at 3 a.m. From then on, he became world famous. He was, P.T. Barnum had him doing speeches for him. He started a railroad. He started a printing press. He ran for Congress successfully 5 times, even under, in one case, suspicion that he, of bribery. And they offered him this deal. They said, if you pull your candidacy, we will let go of this case. And he said no. He fought it and won, and took his seat back in Congress. So I think, like, it's at every aspect in this guy's life, it's just astounding, and has to be told really well.
Yeah. And one of the things I really enjoyed in going through the novel is you pepper the story with historic nods to other individuals like Harriet Tubman and events like the Haitian Revolution. So was this intentional, and what do you hope readers do with these little teasers?
Yeah, well, the my approach to writing, and I've even recently, I wrote Captain America: Brave New World, and a lot of times as you're doing it, you are really looking for, like, what does the audience know and what don't they know, and you don't want to just tell them the story. You want to give them context, what was going on in the world around them. Shows I enjoy are like the Gilded Age and stuff like that, where you get a little bit of history and then you get some story along with it. And as I was doing my research, you can't separate the events from the times that they were happening in. Of course, even as you're writing, there's things that you can't really add to this, put in the story, because Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Robert Smalls were good friends. They had dinners together frequently in the house that he was enslaved in and that he bought when he became famous and rich. So all of these things are really, really important, and you try to tie the characters to the moments, and then hopefully get people interested in reconstruction as well as the story of Robert Smalls.
Yeah, I thought, I treated them like little Easter eggs, right? Every time I saw a mention of somebody or something from the past, I thought, oh, that's so great, because now somebody's going to come across that and say, wait a minute, I've never heard of the Haitian Revolution. What is that? So it was very, very artfully done. And you talked about your research process. So I am curious, what was the research process like for this type of a project?
Yes, well, I think, like everybody, I started with the books. And the books, slave history is interesting because I joke that it's like cat history. Like, nobody sits down and writes the history of their cat, and the cats were, generally illiterate, and so they don't write their own history. There are no journals or anything like that of this. All you get are stories that have been handed down through the ages, and what people can kind of put together as far as historical events. The census data and some of the newspaper data and stuff like that. So it's difficult to figure out, like, his early life, what the connective tissue was with it. And so I had a ton of questions. And, oddly, I went to a bunch of historians and they all just pointed me to the books. And so I said, okay, we need to get people that I can talk to. So Dr. Maisha Eatman, who's a African American history professor at Harvard, she came in and she was really great about answering the questions, and she would go into it, and I would give her what if scenarios, and she would say yes or no. And then Michael Bulwer Moore, who's the great grandson of Robert Smalls, he was able to run things up the flagpole. So I would have a question. I would say, I think this is what happened. I think this is why this happened. And then he would go and ask, his grandmother, and they would come back and say, oh my God, he was exactly right. Because, it's a story that we don't tell very much, but here's what happened. And so I would get those things. And at a certain point, he said, wow, you know more about my great great grandfather than any other historian. You know, because I was asking questions. I needed to have everything filled in.
Right.
So that was the fun part of it. You know, the geeking out, the coffee and history part of it
Yes.
is that everything that you find out, you want to know more. And at that point, I'm just a curious kid who wants answers. And fortunately, I got them.
Yeah, I'm jealous that you got to do some mining of some oral traditions from Robert Small's family. That is incredible, first of all. So hats off to you. And considering that you had that connection with Smalls's family, was there anything that surprised you during this research process?
Oh wow. Well, just about everything. I think there were little times when I surprised myself. For example, there's a in his history it says that he sold tobacco in small portions. He sold candy in small portions, and then there's a gap, and it said he got a job as a lamplighter. And in that gap, it says he kept getting arrested for staying out late, which was illegal for black people at the time. And so I asked Michael Bulwer, I said, I think he got this job so that he could stay out late. Is that it? He's selling candy, whatever. He wants to keep going. He's trying to buy his freedom. And so he gets this job that gives him the excuse to stay out late. And he says, oh, yes, that's exactly what it was. It's like, okay, great, excellent. In other ways, I think just as a storyteller, I was asking myself, what is the best way to announced the coming of the Civil War. And so I did, a bunch of research, and then I found the picnic battle, which a lot of people don't talk about, which is that the North was so arrogant about winning. They thought they were just gonna, it was gonna be one battle and it would be over. So they lined the battlefield with literally with picnics, and they just sat, to watch this game as if it was Pee Wee soccer, and it did not go that well. The South found out that was what was going to happen, and there was a huge ambush, and it became a thing. I thought, as a character, if you're looking at the Civil War itself, what better way to announce the beginning of the Civil War? There are other stories that will come, and hopefully we'll talk about it, but in subsequent volumes of this story, there are other stories that I keep finding that are equally wonderful, and so I can't wait to share them.
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect segue to the next question that I had for you, which was, for me, this book ends on an incredible cliffhanger. Like, this book teases that there's so much more to Robert Smalls' story that we have not even scratched the surface.
Yes.
So I am curious, are there plans to expand the Robert Smalls story either in another novel or maybe in another format? I know you talked about movies, maybe. I'm curious, where are we going with Robert Smalls?
Yes to all things. So, yes, there is plans to make a movie, and we're hoping to make an announcement within the next couple of weeks on that, as to like a director, and quickly thereafter, hopefully somebody to star in it. I'd be happy to hear suggestions. Um, and also, as I was writing it, I said, okay, well, I can do the heist, the thing that he's famous for, in one issue, but I'm going to need two more issues to cover the rest of his life. And of course, the first scene in the graphic novel is Robert Smalls as an older man telling the story to his grandson. And a friend of mine called and said, I know that date, the date that you mentioned on the first page. There's something significant about that. Is that did I catch it? And I said, yes, you caught it. So the story is going to get told all the way through. And the second issue, I think, is more of his fame, the 17 battles he fought for the Union, his meeting with Lincoln, where he convinced Lincoln that black people should fight on the side of the Union Army in the Civil War. So when you see the movie Glory, it's downstream from this. Also, his life as an entrepreneur, as he starts his printing press, which I believe was, as families were trying to gather back together, the ads were basically, have you seen Henry, he's 6 foot tall and is very nice. He's, I'm looking for my husband, that kind of thing. And then the railroad, because a lot of, the freed black people were starting businesses. They couldn't transport their goods. And so he started the railroad in order to help facilitate that. And then it will end with him deciding to go into Congress. And then the third and final volume will be his life in Congress, where he, authors a legislation that starts public schools. He was, very instrumental in a lot of protests of the day, and really changed the world, and was so powerful at the time. We hear these stories of what happened with these people, but yeah, it was really incredible what was happening there. And there are other characters that were also in Congress that I can't wait to tell stories about. So there are three jam-packed volumes to tell, and hopefully we'll get started on the second one pretty soon.
Well, that's really exciting. And the listeners can't see, but I literally like danced in my chair when Rob mentioned that there is, in fact, a movie on its way. I think that is so exciting, and I'm waiting to hear all the details. And so I think for me, one of those stories, or one of the things that I love so much about Robert Smalls, is that he helps us understand the Civil War in a new way. And so I'm curious as to your take on that. How does learning about Robert Smalls help us better understand the Civil War?
Right. Well, I think that what is it they say? History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Mhm.
And today in Los Angeles, where I live, we're in the Supreme Court. We're still debating the 14th Amendment,
Yeah.
birthright citizenship. And, that was Lincoln's solution to, okay, well, slavery's over. Now all these black people are in the country. What do we do? We could either line up a bunch of boats and try to export them, which they did. They gathered $60,000 to ship people to a place called Ile de la Vache, which is a cow island just off of Haiti, and successfully more or less deported 350 people, and that was a disaster. 250 of them came back, and then somebody said, okay, well, we just have to make them all citizens. And that was a great solution to that problem at that time. Hilarious that we're still debating that. So you have that. You also have what I take from it, which is, here's a guy who was born lowest of the low. He's born a slave, lived in the backyard of the McKee family, and somehow became a congressman, successful businessman, and one of the most famous people on earth. And if that can happen, well, then there's hope for all of us.
Yeah.
That everybody, no matter who you are, can gain inspiration from just the guy's grit. And I often use a phrase, WWRSD. What would Robert Smalls do? Right. So you hit a day and it's like, oh man, this is not working out the way I hoped it would. And you just have to say WWRSD, that he would see it through. He would find a way at 23 or at, 53. He would find a way.
Yeah. Well, and also thinking about his life and the various life lessons, some of which you touched on already. What do you hope readers take away from Small's life story and this novel?
Yes. Well, just that, the inspirational part of it. I am hoping that, as you said, Easter eggs. I'm hoping that I lay enough Easter eggs along the way, me being the history Easter bunny, that I hope that there are enough of them that people will see them and say, "Oh, wow, this is really interesting. Maybe I should, pick up a book and check out what this is about, or Google this and see more about the Haitian Revolution, or the context of the time, or that longshoremen were free, essentially, and what was the relationship between the North and the South throughout this time." Of course, in the second issue, there's Union troops go marching down the streets of Beaufort and turning over the houses. That's how Robert was able to buy the house on Prince Street. So hopefully, there's enough of that, and people will say, "Okay, I haven't really looked at this before, but now is a good time to check it out." The waters are nice and warm and safe.
Yes. Well, and you mentioned this in talking about creating the graphic novel, but I'm curious, how do you think graphic novels can help with historical education and help add to it?
I have two sons. And, so I've kind of been through it. I know as a parent, like what you go through. I mean, fortunately, my older son went to the Ivy League, and my youngest son was a Division I lacrosse athlete. But it was a challenge getting them to read things that they didn't want to read very early on. If you gave them a book and said, "Hey, here's history," probably, you're going to get a look. So the idea of putting the same kind of information in a form that they can easily consume and be entertained by, I think really helps. It's not a tome. It's not, a fact for fact history book, but it is something that will fire the imagination and get people going. So there is talk now of getting it into schools. I mean, we sold out almost immediately. I mean, we just came out on June 19th, and it's sold out. We're in a second printing, and there's anticipation that we'll be in a third printing soon, because the demand is so great for it. And to me, that says something. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Well, when they come, okay, good, give them more. and so, because the idea isn't like, oh, push people into books. The idea is to introduce them to history,
right?
And have them say that, okay, well, all slave narratives are not triggering and brutal, and they're not, this is safe in Florida, although who knows what's going to happen there. But it's safe to read. It's inspirational. It's a different kind of narrative of this kind, and hopefully it will spur others to do the same.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really appreciate about graphic novels is it's a way to see yourself visually, right? You're not just reading about yourself and playing a story in your mind. You're actually seeing it played out on the pages. And I think many more people would be interested in history if they saw themselves represented in various ways. So
yes, well, that's what we found with The Princess and the Frog.
Yeah.
That people still come up to me in tears, talking about how what a catharsis it was to see themselves represented as a Disney princess, full animation and everything. And I think there's, we can't ignore the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's what history is, as people are finishing their cups of coffee, that a big part of it is the, just that history inspires us. History connects us to generations of the past. And sometimes our forebrethren they want us to succeed. They want us to learn from their mistakes, and they want us to be inspired by their accomplishments. And, what better way than to show them pictures of people who look like them. I don't get too cute with the language, so it's very readable, very consumable. And at the end of the day, hopefully you feel like you have a friend in Robert Smalls.
And another perfect segue to my next question, which is when people have finished your book and you've done what you set out to do, which is to get them excited and wanting to learn more, where should they go to learn more about Robert Smalls?
If people want to read, there's some really fantastic books out there. There's a book called Be Free or Die, which is just an amazing book, and I leaned on it a lot while I was writing this. There's another one called The Escape of Robert Smalls, A Daring Voyage Out of Slavery. That's kind of fun, same kind of thing. It's very graphic, for younger kids. I think for me too, the government's history site is really, really good about this. Also, you get to announce this, but that Dr. Maisha Eatman and I are writing kind of a read along that goes with the graphic novel, and that gives more context, because of course we're telling a story, but on every page there's a little bit more that people should know, and that you just simply can't cover as you're telling the story. So we're doing it as a teacher's guide, but it will be a teacher's guide plus. It should be on its own a really fun book to read.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I cannot wait.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And is there where should people go to learn more about you and any future projects you're working on?
Oh, cool. Well, I'm on Instagram. I'm a bad Instagrammer, but I'm trying really hard to be better. But I'm at I am Rob Edwards Instagram, and that's, I do try to keep that up to date fairly well. I've had a fun year. Like I said, I wrote Captain America: Brave New World. I also wrote called a movie called King of Kings, which is doing really well. I wrote and directed a movie called Sneaks, and they were all in theaters at the same time. So I was just kind of announcing a lot of stuff, and so I tend to try not to burn myself out as I'm going. But there are other projects in the works that that should be coming up soon. The interesting thing about animation and also like action stuff or tentpole movies is that you can't really talk about them until until the last moment. You can't really say, "Hey, I'm working on this thing." So stay on my Instagram. I am Rob Edwards. If you find me on Facebook, that's cool. Rob Edwards Workshop, where I teach writing. And I also teach at USC and Syracuse University, so you'll get little writing tips along the way, and many of them will feature what I learned while I was writing this graphic novel.
Wonderful. Now, before I let you go, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want future readers to know?
Well, it's that part of this. What is interesting of what we're doing, Legion M and myself, is finding new ways to tell stories in an increasingly risk averse environment. That stories like this need to be told, and a lot of times people are just afraid to tell them. And so the extra work here is, hey, let's. It seems easy in retrospect, but let's write a best-selling graphic novel and win a bunch of awards, and then we can go and make the case for a movie. But I think that it's we've been very fortunate in that the Kickstarter campaign went really well. I think we broke some records there. The launch was great. Obviously, selling out of books and kind of getting big booksellers like Barnes and Noble, had to put in a big order because so many people came into the store demanding it. So that hopefully will turn the tide a little bit, and we'll be able to tell more interesting stories that are a little bit off the grid. So that's the fun thing to kind of watch for. Also, for me, I learned so much about this little period of time, and met so many new characters that I think I'll be writing in this area for a little while. I don't want to just toss so much of this research out the window. So there will be more to come in the next few years in this area, in this space.
Super exciting. And I'm hoping that this is striking right at the right time. I'm thinking right now of the movie Sinners, and that was something that kind of came
Yes.
out of nowhere, right? Beautiful story, beautiful storytelling, not something that would normally be made. So I there's hope, I think, because
Yeah, and you did two episodes about Mary Todd Lincoln, and I have been just waiting to do something about her seamstress, who was
yeah,
also his friend, and they had this really interesting storied friendship that maybe didn't end well, but that it was a really great story to tell of this almost third member of their marriage, and in so many ways, this woman who made these fantastic dresses and everything. And there are many of the chefs. Thomas Jefferson's chef is a really great person to tell. The guy who brought us chicken and waffles, among other things. And so every page that I turn of history, this more than anybody, but that every page I turn in history just inspires me, and as a storyteller, like I have to share these things in whatever format I can.
Well, if the graphic novel is any indication, I think these stories are going to be in super safe hands. So, to all my listeners out there, please make sure you pick up a copy of Defiant. It is beautifully illustrated. It is incredibly accessible. It's one of the best accounts I've seen of one of the more under-celebrated individuals from American history. You won't be able to put it down. I know I wasn't. I sat down, read it cover to cover. It's very good. So, thank you again, Rob, and thank you so much for your work.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
My sincerest thanks again to Rob for coming on to the show. If you have any interest in Robert Smalls or want to get history in a dynamic medium, then Defiant is the book for you. Thanks, peeps. I'll see you next week. Thanks for sitting down with me as I explored this chapter of American history. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe and share with your friends. I look forward to our next cup of coffee together.